Found out in the fields with another episode of Good Life Project. My guest today is Shechtman, who's the founder of a really fascinating retail and community concept in New York City called Story. We're going to jam on exactly what this is, how it came to life, but also kind of take a step back and find out what the story behind the story is as well. So great to be hanging out with you today.
Thanks for having me.
I love it. What you've created is just so cool.
Thanks.
And I know I'm going to butcher it if I actually try and describe it like from my lens. So give me what's the thumbnail of what Story actually is?
So Story is a space, a 2,000 square foot space, in fact. And the way I describe it is that it has the point of view of a magazine, but we reinvent it entirely every 4 to 8 weeks like a gallery, and then we sell things like a store. So in essence, it's like a living magazine where we have new issues and we're always changing it up.
So give me some examples.
So in the past 2 years, we've done over 13 stories. So it's actually cool. The O in our name Story is parentheses.
Right.
And so in the same way, you have titles of a magazine like Vogue and Sports Illustrated, and you have different issues. The name of our issues is always within the brackets of the O. Mm-hmm. So we've had Love Story, New York Story, Making Things Story, Home for the Holidays Story, Color Story. So we redesign, we re-merchandise, and then we have events to help bring those stories to life.
Right. And we're not talking about just, changing a couple of things. I mean, you literally shut down
the entire store
and rebuild the entire thing from the ground up. Was it like a week or something?
A new
like that?
issue. Yeah, it's anywhere from 5 days to 2 weeks. We might even start closing for longer periods of time just to catch our breath. But yeah, anywhere from 5 to 10 days. Which
is incredible. And so when you're thinking about this, because there's so many questions I have about this. Because when you're thinking about this, the world is out there, and we're actually filming this, shortly after Thanksgiving, the start of the holiday season at the end of 2013, and where everybody's kind of mad about retail, and there's all this news about everything moving online, and people are like, "Oh, retail, yep." And you're doing something radically different in the retail space, and I guess it's sort of like the story behind the story, to a certain extent, I guess, is that retail has been relatively static for decades. And you came in and said, it's time to innovate.
Well, I think too, right? Like if you think about it, the past 20 years have been nonstop digital and technological innovation. And we have new business models, and we have new technologies, and we have new devices, and we have new apps. But we're living, breathing human beings. Yeah. And yet, why aren't we innovating in a physical world? And I think, specifically when you look at retail, right, you have companies like Birchbox that's subscription retail, or you have Quirky, which is making invention accessible through crowdsourcing. But yet retail sits there and is like sales per square foot and says the same thing for 100 years and wonders why it's broken.
Right.
And so I think, I just got an email that Amazon's now delivering on Sundays, So we have everyone on the planet breaking rules online, and yet we're not really changing behavior offline. And so I think one of the things that was really important to me in terms of developing and launching this new business is, as a human, what are behaviors that are now part of who we are as a result of technology, getting new content more frequently, developing a sense of community online. And then how can we, as Story, take those trends and amplify the best of them offline?
Yeah. So one of the coolest things, though, you're innovating not just in the products you sell and stuff like that, literally rebuilding the whole store. I mean, shutting it down and opening it up. There's something that I love, the fact that there's this focus on not just selling. You're not just innovating in terms of how do we sell more stuff at a better price, how do we get people in here. The fundamental nature of what you're doing is something I'm obsessed with, which is storytelling. And bringing community together around story.
Yeah.
And I think it's become such a lost part. And as people move more and more online, and it's just transactional, I mean, that's so powerful to kind of be bringing people back together, around the hearth, around the story.
Yeah. It's something that's always been part of who I am. It's funny, my dad was just in the city and told me a story the other day. So he stays in touch with everyone. He's the guy in the town we grew up with who everyone knows. And he bumped into an old babysitter, and who I guess babysat me when I was 6.
Right.
So I don't remember, but he was speaking with her and giving updates about my sister and I, and said, "What do you remember if anything, about the girls. And he goes, well, and this woman had no idea what I did or anything.
Right.
He goes, the one thing I remember about Rachel is whenever we went shopping, she'd always say, come here, I have to show you something. And I'd say, Rachel, we've already bought what we need, we're leaving. And I'd be like, no, we don't need to buy it. I just found something really cool I want to show you. And so I think finding the thing and then the story behind the thing is something that I've always loved. And I think back to what I was saying about sales per square foot and thinking that that's archaic, I look at what we do as experience per square foot. And I think when you change the language and how you look at something, it creates space to be able to tell stories and create community.
Yeah, I love that. And that what's so fascinating when you change the metric, you know, and you measure your success with a different metric, how everything changes profoundly, you know. But at the same time, you know, very often that gets you back to that original metric that everybody else is measuring.
Right. That's true.
Equally good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, our holiday numbers last year were up there with Lululemon, which is top 3 last year in retail square footage. But I think, you know, the other thing that's worth mentioning is both our business model, right? So for as innovative as the consumer experience side of the business is, so is the back end. So like a magazine tells stories by writing articles and having pictures, we tell stories through our merchandising and all the events we do. But then we have an advertising publishing side of the business. So brands pay money, and a lot of money, to sponsor different stories. So what that looks like, for example, is during Color Story, Benjamin Moore was a sponsor. Then we did Making Things Story with 3D printers and laser cutters, and GE was the sponsor. And now we're Home for the Holiday Story.
Right.
And so we bring in different partners who are corporations who pay us money, but they also become part of the content in the story.
Yeah, so it's really, and I love the way that you said, it's not just traditional retail. Like, we make all of our money by selling something. It's this multifaceted partnership where there's media, there's sponsorship. And
exactly.
So which is so cool because I love, whenever you look at things like retail, so many people are just, so I'm an author too, right?
Yeah.
And so many authors who've been in this space for a long time, a lot of publishers are like, oh, doom and gloom. Amazon's the devil. They're killing us. And there's just not a whole lot we can do. You know, we're just losing everything. Whereas I look at it, I'm like, okay, there is mass disruption, but there's no such thing as disruption without possibility. Right? So your job is to figure out where the possibility is. You know, and people are terrified of that. They're like, but, you know, all the stuff that we've been doing for years, you know, like, we don't know how to do that new stuff. But that's not the reason that you have to go under. You know?
It's true.
Go out there and figure out something else to do.
Yeah, it's so true. It's funny you say that about books. So last year was our first Christmas. We sold over 2,000 books just from Random House. That doesn't count the other publishers.
Oh my God.
Which was shocking to me. My favorite story happened 2 weeks ago. A woman's buying 2 huge coffee table books and she's like, can you overnight ship these? And part of me wanted to be like, it's not like she was even taking them to a party that night. Can you send them overnight? And I'm thinking to myself, like, do I send her to Amazon.com? Like,
right.
So, you know, I also think context, you know, I think we underestimate the fact that we have the power, maybe not to change certain behaviors, but to impact them if we think about the setting in which we're communicating what we do. And that's something, you know, the store to me is much of a lab as it is a community center.
Talk to me more about that. Like, I want to go deeper in that. When you say using the store as a lab or a community center, like, fill it in a bit.
So like last January, February, we had a wellness story.
Okay.
And so, you know, what makes sense to tell a holiday story is different than what makes sense to tell a wellness story. And so we had Pilates and yoga classes every weekend in the store. So who would have thought that you're going to take strangers, customers, and put them on 10th Avenue and 19th Street in a store window doing Pilates and yoga every weekend? We also have a partnership with the Children's Museum of Art, and we do kids workshops at 4 o'clock in the afternoons for every story. And so that piece, you know, I often call us a dating service, and that we play matchmaker between brands and consumers through storytelling. But it's really evolved into not just being brands and consumers, but being consumers with other consumers, neighbors to neighbors. And also now moving it forward as we look into our kind of vendor maker community, doing the same thing for them as well.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, there's this experiential side to it too, where you don't necessarily go just because you need something.
Right.
You go for the experience.
Some people come once a week.
Oh, really?
Literally. We could tell you the names of almost all the dogs in the neighborhood. Yeah. No, there's people who'll come in, you know, just to talk. Everyone knows our sales associates, to look around. I'm always moving things around so everyone finds something different in there.
I think that's part of the lost art of retail to a certain extent also. You get like, old world shopkeeper.
Right.
And a lot of the people who would come into the store, they would just come every day or twice a week and they'd have their chair in the store.
Yeah.
And they would just sit there and it was all about the storytelling, the kibitzing, and just being around.
Yeah, it's so true.
And we've lost so much of that. So when you build something like that, it's almost like part of the innovation is bringing back what we used to have 50 years ago.
It's so true. It's so true. Back to the basics.
Right.
Right.
That we've just kind of like completely walked away from.
Yeah. I keep on saying analog retail is the new sexy.
I love that. I want to know about your story, behind the story. So, you've built this incredible thing. When did you actually launch Story?
I just had my 2-year birthday on Sunday. So we actually launched in beta. It was actually something where I'm like, if tech companies get a test period to work out kinks, I want a test period to work out kinks. So on December 1st, 2011, we launched in beta. I called it a startup store, and I only sold merchandise from startups. And then we formally launched on February 1st with Love Story.
Mm-hmm. So it's been an astonishingly short period of time.
Yeah, a lot's happened in 2 years.
Right, and I want to talk a little bit more about sort of like where you're going with it, but I'm really just curious about you and your journey and what got you to this place. So take me back a little bit, because this is just the last 2.5 years. So where are you traveling before this? What's your path that brings you here?
So it really began when I was 12. So I grew up in a family of retailers, 4 generations, in fact. And my mom is in the gourmet food business. And so I was 12 and it was time for my bat mitzvah. And so it was the same time of the year that was the New York gift show, a trade show in New York. Yeah. So she took me into the city and we went shopping for bat mitzvah favors wholesale. And, little did I know that I'd ask her a question that would end up changing my life, which was, you can shop for a living? But in all honesty, that really kind of put a bug in my ear, because I'd find these things and I was aware of the stories around me, and it was just fascinating. And really, over the years, I was just in an event and saw Donna Karan last night, and she was a huge instrumental figure in my path, because when I was in high school, she did an event called 7th on Sale that raised money for AIDS using fashion. And at that point in time in history, the event she produced raised the most money for AIDS ever in a single day. So that was the first point where I actually remember having the thought, wait a minute, you can sell things, but in a different context.
Yeah.
And so that was really the beginning of it. And then...
And what's so fascinating is that you're not shopping for the purpose of acquiring the thing.
Right.
For you, there's a deeper psychology. And that starts when you're 12.
Yeah.
So where do you go from there? I mean, you start to look around and you're like, oh, there's this whole world that I didn't know exists. And you can use it for so many, as sort of like a leverage point, a lever for so many different things.
Yeah. So what happened, I went to school by the name of Colorado College. You take one class at a time. So it's a semester condensed into 3.5 weeks. I studied economics, got out of school, worked for my mom for a little, and then moved to New York and worked on a startup that I never started. But that really, it was part incubator, part co-op for emerging brands and designers. And it really ended up being my version of DIY business school. And from there, I took a full-time job, got that out of my system, working for a luxury goods catalog. And then I left to consult. And what was interesting there is I said, okay, I'll consult for 6 months and then launch one of my 10 crazy business ideas, because I always knew I'd work for myself.
So then why consult? Because this is an interesting conversation, right? And that's a conversation I have with a lot of people.
Yeah.
What was the role of consulting for you? Like, what gap did it fill for you?
I actually never intended for consulting to be a career. For me, it was, I was leaving this full-time job, and I knew I'd go launch my own business, but I needed income. So I'm like, okay, I know enough people, I'll consult for 6 months, then I'll launch it. Basically. Right, exactly. But an amazing thing happened. I got all these amazing clients. So I ended up, when Tom's Shoes had just 30 employees, I ended up running partnerships as a consultant. With Gilt Group, I did marketing and merchandising. Diane von Furstenberg hired me for the CFDA. Then I got big guys like Gap and Kraft and AOL. And what happened was really interesting, right? So I looked at myself as merchandise, and I thought, if I'm selling, why am I selling? I didn't work at McKinsey. I don't have an MBA. And whether it's a startup or a multi-billion-dollar company, they all have one thing in common. And that thing is also what informed the development of Story. And what it is all these companies are United Nations without translators. So marketing speaks Japanese, finance speaks Swahili, PR speaks Taiwanese, and no one is translating. So my hypothesis is that even if you're doing well, there's a lot of opportunity left on the table.
Yeah.
And the languages I speak are marketing, merchandising, and business development.
So it's like you're the universal translator.
For those things, those are the 3 languages I know.
Right.
And I can read a balance sheet, so that's helpful. But
Right. So I want to ask you about something else also, because you end up in a remarkably short period of time with the clients as a consultant that most people kill for, and you need to have a Harvard degree, you need this, you need to be blessed by something, you need permission to go and no. Yeah, I think that's one of the big mythologies is that to work with the big players, if that's in fact what you want to do, and for some people it's right and for some people it's not, you need this big pedigree, you need the big introductions. That's not true from what I'm seeing with you.
Yeah. Well, I think, ignorance is bliss to some degree for me,
totally
is I didn't know better.
Right.
And I also believe, I'm saying all these one-liners, but actions speak louder than words. And so if I did this amazing partnership for Tom's Shoes and the proof is in the pudding, and I'm at a cocktail party and I meet someone from another brand and I tell them what I did and they think that's cool and they're like, hey, let's have coffee. And then it kind of snowballs. Yeah. And so I think, you have to have tangible results and deliver on them. And that's, in essence, what becomes the key to unlock all those other doors. And I think that kind of combined with intention and being aligned, and doing what you're doing because you want to do it, and it's where your skills are. And not doing it from a place of ego or money, And so I find that any opportunity that I took that was because I was passionate about it and I had the skills to execute on it were the ones that delivered the best results.
It's so funny you brought up the word alignment, because I've kind of been going down this deep rabbit hole around the idea of alignment, because I think so many entrepreneurs and just people in business, building your careers, they're like, something's not quite right? And they're trying to figure out, how do I fix this? How do I get to the next level? Whatever it is that you're doing. And everyone's looking at all the tools and the programs they can take and all the things they can do external to themselves, rather than just sort of pausing and zooming the lens out and saying, okay, who am I? Right. What do I actually care about? What lights me up on a level where I can't shut up about it. I can't stop thinking about it. I want to do more of it. Right. And then how do I find that? How do I get the skills to be really good at that? Yeah. And then how do I do that and just that? And when you hit that level of alignment, which is what you were just talking about, it sounds so corny, and I'm a pretty science-based person, but it feels like the universe just stands up and says, hell yeah, we're going to support you. Not always. You still have to work really hard. It's not just, okay, come. Yeah. But there's this internal thing that happens when you really get aligned with self-knowledge and develop the skills around that. People sense. And that, to me, increasingly, I believe, is such a huge unlock key for whatever it is that you want to create.
What you put out is what you get back. I noticed that in the store too. I can walk in, good energy day, bad energy day.
You mean just personally?
Just in the store. You can walk in the, I think spaces have that, I think.
No, I totally agree. I think a space is imbued with that too. But I also think it comes from the top down. Right. Which brings up a really interesting question, right? Because if you're running a brick and mortar business, and for you, maybe there's an argument that it's actually, you've got this crazy hybrid. Because it's not just brick and mortar, it's media, it's experiential, extends it, there's this blend online, but you still have to have people working and front-facing people. It's not just people in an office doing, moving around digits. Right. You've got to have people creating the physical environment. Right. So how do you take that alignment and that vision, that story in your head, and bring people into it that have that same thing, so you feel like they represent it on the level that you want to?
Yeah. It's a good question. It's a hard one. I mean, I think, that's not a skill set that I brought to the table in starting the business in terms of I've never managed people before.
Yeah.
So you take that combined with a business model that's never been done before. And so in essence, I'm learning at the same time as my staff.
Right.
We obviously have different vantage points, but so it's been challenging, to be honest. I think what makes someone successful in traditional retail isn't necessarily what makes them successful at Story. So, we've gotten there by kind of playing mixologist and testing out different recipes. I feel like now we have a fantastic one. And at the end of the day, more than anything, they're storytellers. So whether you walk out of the store with a shopping bag or not, what I care about is that you're leaving there knowing a story you didn't know before you went in there. And that's what's most important to me. And we take a tremendous amount of time hiring people. And even for the holidays, an advisor said, just get some temps in there if you're that desperate. But we won't.
Yeah. I mean, it's because it's such a part of the fiber of what it's about.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, which is challenging. Because when you're thinking about how do I just create this, and it's also challenging. So let's go one of my fascinations is always entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur. You're an entrepreneur. Is building something that's in your head. You want it to be extraordinary, right? You want it to be sometimes really big, sometimes not. But you want it to be amazing. You want to clearly, you're looking to impact people on a deep level. But at the same time, you want to live your life.
Right.
So, and especially in retail, like long hour, 7-day-a-week business.
Right.
How do you dance with that?
Well, I don't know that I have the answer is the honest answer. I think I'm still trying to figure it out. I think, retail alone is challenging. And then we're a hybrid of so many industries, right?
Yeah.
So we're part media company, we're part agency, and we're part retailer. And then, throw in an incubator for the new designers we sell. We're the community center for our customers. So going into it, I knew that I wasn't going to have a life, and that was okay with me within a certain framework of time. Because I don't believe, for me to say, okay, I'm going to run 10 miles a day and I'm going to continue to travel and I'm going to have lunch with my friends and do all these things, I'd just be setting myself up for failure because, if we compare the business to a living, breathing human being, and I realize that it's not, but, a business like this is born in an incubator because it's new and it hasn't been done before. And so it needs my focus and attention to get it out of the incubator, which is what 2014 is all about. So
that's sort of like in your mind, okay, 2 years in,
yes,
things are really getting figured out.
I'm ready for my life back.
But which is so important though, because look, anyone who started any kind of business knows that there will be, I've had this conversation a lot of times, I don't really believe in balance. I believe in blend. I believe in, there's no static place where just everything is in balance when you're a really creative person, when you're an entrepreneur. And I think for most people, if you're really honoring like something that's calling you deeply, it's you're just constantly sort of like shifting where your energy is going. But there's no static zone where everything is just down the middle. And I don't necessarily think I'd want to be there if there was. But at the same time, when you're launching something, the pendulum swings out to the extreme. And I think the danger with a lot of people, whether you're an artist or an entrepreneur, like a maker, whatever it is that you stay there. And that you're just like, this is where I need to be indefinitely to create what I want to create, a store, a product, a show, a body of work. And then you end up blowing up. Whereas, to me, the way that I try and deal with that is, okay, there's going to be a window of time where I need to be in a certain place. And it's the nature of what it is. But I'm sort of putting an edge to that. And I know that if I hit that designated time and I'm not able to pull back, then I can't just say, well, I'll just keep staying here. Like, I'm not going to go month to month on that place. I'm going to sit there and pull back and very deliberately say, okay, having the data that I have now that I know, because in the beginning it was just guesswork. Like now I have a whole bunch of data that I can make decisions on. Okay, what is that realistic place that I need to move to? And then talk to the people in my life that matter most to me. Have that conversation. I think that's the toughest thing. Is that cool with you?
Right.
You're like, I'm willing to be in this place until then, but is that going to work for us?
Right. It's being aware of your impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a challenging, really challenging process, especially when you love what you do.
Yeah, it's true.
Because you can go down that rabbit hole and stay there, and you feel pretty lit up for a lot of the time.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't love what they do, so they don't understand it.
Yeah, so it's really, I mean, it's such a fascinating conversation. I love just asking people how they look at that dance, because everyone handles it differently.
Yeah.
So, all right, zoom the lens back a little bit. What is it about entrepreneurship, about storytelling, about bringing community together? What's the underlying thing? What is it that lights you up about this? Like, what's the deeper thing that makes you say, yeah?
So I think, the irony is the deeper thing was something that I discovered by accident through story, but that was at the core of the startup that I never started in 2000.
Ah, interesting.
So we get pitched a lot for product. So in the same way people pitch magazines for story, we get pitched all the time for product. So during our Making Things story last year, I thought, we're getting all these submissions for all these products. Let's just have a night, call it pitch night, and see who shows up. And I'll invite my friends from coolhunting.com since they're working on their gift guide, and let's just kind of see what happens. So we made it from 6 to 8, and we just told people they had to have a finished product that they were able to sell. And we were there till 11 o'clock at night. And when I say there was amazing product, I mean there was amazing product, and we didn't qualify it. So my necklace, for example, you might think, okay, pretty, whatever, no big deal. But it's a hidden message.
Oh, wow.
I have like hairs.
I don't know if you guys can see that, but when you look at the bottom of everything, it actually says story.
Yeah, so, but you could make your own necklace. So it could say whatever.
So you just choose the letters. Right?
Yeah, you just choose the letters.
Ah, that's
so
amazing.
This was one of our pitch night folks who was actually a customer, and she came in one day and someone had told her about pitch night. And her name's Beth Macri, and she was a structural engineer. And shortly after pitch night and being in story, she quit her day job and is doing this full time.
No kidding.
And we've kind of taken her under our wing as our beta incubator member of the story family. And as a result of being in story, she's been on The View. Her product's been on The View with Whoopi Goldberg, on the news and magazines. And so now pitch night is part of our fiber. It's part of every single story. We have different pitch nights. But I think what's exciting to me about pitch night is it democratizes access. So what I mean by that is online, we have all these tools. We have Kickstarter that enables you to fund a business. We have Etsy, which enables you to sell things and is also a discovery platform. But there's no tangible version of that in the real world. So I bring in other retailers and other members of the media so that it's not just me on the panel, so that people, you're not going to be able to show up at Condé Nast and walk downstairs and say, hey, I'd like to meet the fashion editor for Details magazine.
Right.
But you can show up at Story for pitch night and meet him, and everyone who's there can meet him. And so there's no winner or loser. It's just about creating access to conversation, and people get a chance to tell their story. And I kid you not, people shriek at the top of their lungs just with the opportunity for 3 minutes to tell their story. And as a result, people have been picked up by the Container Store, gotten some of the biggest POs of their career. So that to me is my passion, and will probably be a much bigger thing in 2014, because that's what gets me out of bed more than anything.
That's amazing. So it's about serving people on a very different level. It's like helping find people and just allowing them, giving them the channels and the access and the resources to flourish.
All you have to do is create the framework, and they'll make their way.
And you had no idea when you did this that would become.
I've always had a passion to finding new brands and helping independent designers, and that's always been part of who I am. But I knew I'd sell things from these different brands and that it'd be part of what we do. I had no idea that, I didn't strategize about an event like Pitch Night, and had no idea. Last Saturday we had every news truck known to mankind in the store for Small Business Saturday. And the thing that made me happiest that day was the 16-year-old from Pitch Night, Will, who has a company called Unwashed Denim. And he makes denim accessories in his bedroom. And he found out about Pitch Night because his mom's a customer. And he said, Rachel, he goes, guess what? I'm like, what? He goes, I just shipped an order to a store in London because they found my product in your store. Because we do signs next to all these designers.
Yeah, right.
We give their website, their Twitter handle, and say, hey, you saw them here, but go explore them online. So that's the stuff that's
amazing. So it's like you're serving as a discovery engine for new talent.
That's my drug. Yeah.
Yeah. So cool, especially because these days, and I'll bring it back to the book world again, because that's where some of my frame of reference is that the big word that people are freaking out about in the book world is discovery.
Right.
How do people discover the good stuff again if, like retail goes away?
Right.
Because you're not just browsing the bookstore, it's not on the front tables. But it's like, you know what? Retail done differently becomes this beautiful discovery engine. And also, what I love what you're doing is that you're creating this platform for 16-year-old kids who are making stuff in their bedroom to actually like be in a really cool store, and then to get exposure to media and bigger business and all this stuff. And it's this conduit for creativity and for innovation, for self-expression that goes just so, touches so many people on so many different levels, like up and down the chain.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, it's my favorite part. I love it.
So is that where you think, you mentioned that you're kind of like thinking through, okay, 2014. Is that kind of where you're thinking you're spending more energy?
It could be.
Not saying anything, but.
It could be another store somewhere else. It could be another website. I don't know. I mean, but, at the end of the day, right? Like, life is short. And so if I think about, like, where do I get pure joy and happiness? That's it. And it doesn't mean I don't like the other things. I do like the other things. But, like, that euphoria I get and that excitement and the passion I have and the visceral reaction I have when Will says that about the store in London, like, there's no reason why I shouldn't figure out if I can feel that good for a moment, why not do that all day long?
That's awesome. There's something in Buddhism called the Four Immeasurables, and one of them translates loosely to appreciative joy, which is, or in Yiddish, naches.
Naches.
So it's the joy that you feel when when somebody else that you actually care about succeeds, and you care so genuinely about them that you feel it as your own success. And it seems like that's part of what's going on.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah, which is pretty cool to actually be able to build a business and an income around that. I mean, around building something that allows other people to flourish, and then seeing their success as yours. That's pretty awesome.
Thanks.
So you also seem really drawn to media. Is that because you're genuinely just drawn to media, or you just see it as a channel for what we were just talking about that's really effective?
In terms of the framework in which I talk about the store as media?
Yeah, and just creating media.
Well, I think...
You're mentioning TV. Because you seem like your mind goes to, I want to create media experiences and more of them. What's that about?
I think it's about a layer underneath it, and it's about the why before the what. So what I mean by that is, like, you talked about disrupting, and I love reinventing, right? And so I don't want to invent Play-Doh, but I want to do something with Play-Doh that no one's ever done before. And that's kind of how I was looking at story. And by the way, I had no intention of, like, launching a business that everyone would write about and talk about and all this stuff. It was an experiment to do a new retail store that could be profitable in 1 year. And then I was profitable in 1 year, and then I'm like, now what do I do? And then, but I think, to answer your question about media, I think one thing that resonated with me in thinking about the model was, we buy ads on TV, in magazines, there's billboards. But if you stop and you look at consumer behavior, we spend a tremendous amount of time in physical places. So why can't we use that as a media channel? And not only as inbound media, but outbound. And so what I mean by that is, agencies, brands rent studios, build sets, create content, put it online. But why can't you take existing places and use them as forms for storytelling? So we'll do we did a fireside chat with the amazing fashion designer Norma Kamali. Or conversation on innovation with Yves Behar, and the editor-in-chief of Fast Company. But what you're doing is you're creating a physical experience for the people in that room. But if you're capturing that content and then putting it online, it serves as some form of media.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think it's just, I think retail and media are two, in a very broad stroke generalization, two areas that I think are ripe for some reinventing. And so I just have fun playing and building.
No, I love that. I mean, it's funny because originally, when I started to learn more about you and about story, part of my question was, well, do we try and just shoot this in the middle of the store in the middle of the day, like when there's people around, like tie it in with whatever the story of the month or the 2 months are, or do we shoot it in an environment like this and then go back? But yeah, like the moment I really got the concept, I was like, this is ripe for media. Yeah. Because there's just so much cool stuff. To me, I look for opportunities to play. Yeah. And there's so many opportunities to play there.
Yeah. There's a lot.
So it's like, how could you not?
Right. Yeah, there is a lot.
That's awesome. So, so the future really of this is, who knows?
Who knows?
And you're comfortable with that? Or is that actually something that you're really excited about?
The answer is I don't know. I mean, the good news is it's like the Price is Right. You got door number 1, door number 2, and door number 3. And I think I have an idea of what's behind those doors. I'm just not sure which door I'm going to walk into. But I think, I don't know where it came from, but I've always been very comfortable around change or not knowing, in my professional life, I should say. So yeah.
So is it different in your personal life? Are we allowed to go there?
we can go there.
Just because it's fascinating to me how people, my last book was on uncertainty, how people handle uncertainty. And it was really interesting to me how people would compartmentalize. Yeah. How they would be insanely tolerant of ambiguity and uncertainty in one part of life. True. And then the other part's like, bam, it has to be 100% certain.
Oh, but yeah, I mean, my guy friends specifically find it comical that there's a borderline split personality between my personal life and the business. But I think, too, just like that baby requires certain things, and even if you're not in the mood, if the baby needs it, you have to give it to the baby. And again, I don't want to belittle the importance of a living, breathing human being to a store, but I think it's an important analogy. And so, if the business needs something, or one of my 20 employees needs something, or I'm doing promotion for it, I have to find it in me to go do that and perform. And in my personal life, I enjoy being quiet. I would throw my cell phone away if I could. I'd go hiking every day, so it's a little bit of a split personality, but I also think one informs the other. If I didn't put so much work into my energy into my work, I probably wouldn't want to go hiking every day. And if I went hiking every day and didn't have work, I'd probably go crazy. So I think it's a yin and a yang to some degree. Yeah, no,
and I'm completely the same way. I love being on stage for an hour.
Right, exactly.
and part of this is my personality. I speak a fair amount, and then there are some people who speak and they just want to work the room. They're so happy.
Yeah.
I want to be alone, walking along a river or in the woods somewhere, within 5 minutes. Yeah. I love it. I love the interaction. I love serving people. Yeah. But I fill my tank up very often away from people.
Right. I'm the same way. And for me, I think one of the things that I've just been trying to figure out is for people who meet me in story context, right? So the way they experience me is a part of me, right? But maybe not the majority of me. And so that's something that, it is what it is. I am who I am, but it is something that I struggle with because there are these kind of split personalities, and the latter, the chuck the cell phone, go for a hike, ain't gonna come out if you're meeting me on the sales floor or up on a stage or in front of a camera.
Yeah. But you still have to honor them, or else that front-facing thing is not sustainable anymore.
Right, exactly. Or I come across as schizophrenic.
Or that. I love this conversation. You and I could probably jam on this stuff for a long time, but so the name of this project is Good Life Project. So when I offer that term out to you, to live a good life, what comes up? What does it mean to you?
I think a good life is one in which you know, you have meaningful, fulfilling relationships, and where your days have more joy and happiness than they do, you know, stress and intolerance.
Cool. I like that. It's been awesome hanging out. Really,
I think a good life is also about, I think my friend Graham Hill once said, you know it's a good day when you don't have to set your alarm to wake up in the morning. So, and I guess like, you know, not always being so programmed. I just like that idea of just like waking up and not needing an alarm to tell me when to wake up.
Yeah, I love that too. I'm just thinking, I haven't used an alarm in a long time.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've used an alarm too much.
Awesome hanging out with you. I can't wait to see what the next theme is going to be, what the next story is going to be. I know, like, you're not going to share it with me. But
well, I always say you don't know what's on the cover of the new issue of the magazine before the magazine comes out.
You have to go wait and see.
Yeah.
Very cool. So my guest today has been Rachel Shechtman, the founder of Story, a really fascinating store community media venture in New York City and Chelsea. Definitely go check it out. Jonathan Fields signing off for Good Life Project.